Hey, innovators and investors. Join us on Innovation and Income for part 3 of our From Minimum Wage to 100K series. This video focuses on the crucial habits of living below your means. Learn practical tips to manage your expenses, save more, and make smarter financial decisions. Ready to take control of your spending and start saving for the future? Let's dive in. In part 3, we have to talk about living below your means. So what does that mean exactly? It means that for every dollar that we spend, or that we earn rather, we should never spend more than that dollar. In fact, we should always spend a little bit less than that dollar so that we have it to be able to put towards other objectives that we have for our financial goals. It's important that we understand this and start to learn this early. Number one, it's going to help us to move forward and get us further toward our goal and getting us into ultimately meeting our financial goals as well as our career goals. But it's also one of those tasks, one of those items that will help you to learn what millionaires know and what millionaires utilize all the time to be able to gain the wealth that they have, but then also be able to maintain it over time. Because it'll be very easy that as we start to earn more, to spend more than it is than what we earn. And once we start getting into debt and start utilizing debt as a means of being able to maintain a certain lifestyle, that is something that can be very dangerous. And so it's very important that early on that we start by learning to live below our means. So by doing that, we first have to have an overall budget, have an understanding of what it means for us to be able to live on a regular basis. We have to understand what our costs are. We have to understand how much we're spending in each category, whether it be food, whether it be fuel for a vehicle in order to get to and from work and to school and to education, and what overall those expenses are. There are many different tools that you can utilize. They have applications out there that you can go to and try to make it simplified, but you can use something as easy as a spreadsheet in order to be able to get a better understanding of overall of what your budget is. This is something that I just randomly grabbed on the internet, and this was a free Excel spreadsheet that lists some general budgetary needs, and it gives you an opportunity of putting in what your income is, if you're any extra income that you could be producing, but then start breaking it down into categories, understanding what it would cost to for rent, for electricity, for fuel, for water and sewer, if those are items that you have to pay for on a regular basis. These are ways of being able to track what it is you're getting in, how much it's actually costing, and then matching up what you believe the cost is to what the actual costs are, getting an understanding of when those costs are moving and being able to make adjustments to what you're spending that money on. This is a great way of understanding if you're starting to lose ground or gain ground with regards to how much you're earning and to how much you're investing in your future and your financial goals. There are small savings over time that can make huge differences. So by making small adjustments to your budget, you can go ahead and conserve and bring that money forward so that you can actually start to put it into something that's going to pay off dividends in the future. Part of that is being smart about shopping and spending. Techniques for saving money on groceries, clothing, and other essentials, looking for sales and shopping around for different brands in different places where you can potentially get the brands that you like or the clothes that you're comfortable with. It's not always the worst thing to get something that is marked down or on clearance or on sale, or possibly at another location where there's maybe discount clothing, as an example. But always looking for the sales opportunity, looking for a means of being able to reduce the overall cost of what it would mean to, whether it be buy groceries or buy clothing. A good opportunity for groceries too is don't be afraid to look at store brands. Things like that can actually help conserve overall costs of what it means to actually spend money or fulfill the needs that you have on a regular basis. Going through those and effectively understanding where you can save money, whether it be buying in bulk or whether it be using coupons, would be a great opportunity to be able to reduce that overall cost, but still meet the minimum needs that you have. These take time and effort. It has to be a concerted effort where you are understanding that there is a need to look for these items, to look for these sales and opportunities, and be ready to action them when they become available. The odds are that when you're looking for a particular food item or a particular clothing item, the odds are it's not going to be on sale at the time you're looking for it. You have to look at opportunities as they come and as they're available to you, and make sure that you're only spending the money on the items that you need, not necessarily pushing ahead or going too far and trying to buy way ahead of time. The other important item is building an emergency fund. This is a crucial item, is having these funds available, because what is always likely to happen is life will always throw a curveball to you. Things will happen, such as something will break on your vehicle in order to get to work or to school or to continue your education. These are essentials. So something will break and something will happen that will act as a setback. There are two ways in which you can handle that setback. One is to put it on debt. Put it on a credit card, take a loan, have a means of being able to get that payment elsewhere. That's not the best way. What ends up happening is it ends up costing you a lot more. While it gets you out of the immediate emergency, it creates a long-term issue in the fact that now something that may have cost you $1,000 to repair may end up costing you several thousands to actually fully pay off once you've gone through and paid down the debt that was necessary in order to get it done at the time that you needed. Alternatively, as you start to save funds and put it aside, you'll start to build this emergency fund. This emergency fund is ideal for you being able to meet the needs that you have at that given point in time. So when that emergency comes up, and it will come up, you have the funds necessary in order to get through it and get to the next phase, and make sure that you're not putting yourself behind any more so than what you have within your emergency fund. As a good rule of thumb, the emergency fund ideally is 3 to 6 months of expenditure of what it would cost for you to live. That's not always feasible. Having a few $1,000s available in a savings fund that you have access to, and realizing this is not money that you can touch for any other fund, any other means. It can't be entertainment. It can't be utilized as a vacation fund or concert tickets or something exciting or fun or buying a replacement or new vehicle. This has to be money put aside specifically for the purposes of being there in the event of an emergency. Because emergencies will happen. There's unfortunately no way of knowing when it is going to happen, so it's not something you can plan for. So the best thing you can do is build an emergency fund as soon as possible. It's the first thing that you should be building and saving towards to make sure that you're able to weather a storm when it happens, so that can't trip you up and set you back too far. In the event that you have to tap into that emergency fund and it served its purpose, meaning that you were able to utilize it in order to meet an unforeseen circumstance, it's important to get right back into replenishing that emergency fund. The last thing you would want to happen is have your emergency fund drained due to an emergency, and then shortly thereafter have another emergency, in which case your funds have already been drained and you're back to going into debt and using credit. That gets us right into debt management. This is a big one. Debt, you always want to pay off fast. When you think about racking up debt, whether it be a credit card debt or an automotive loan or something, some student loans is a good example. These are all debts that will stick with you and they will grow over time. This is not something that you can typically just pay off as you go as a minimum balance and expect it to go down at the same rate. So owing that $1,000 with a higher interest rate, say on a credit card, is something that on a monthly basis, the likelihood is that it can grow at to or equal to your minimum payment. This means that you will never pay off that debt, or you'll pay off that debt extremely slowly. And eventually you'll have ended up paying 2 to 3 times your initial amount of money that was utilized against that debt by not paying it off in a timely manner. Debt is something that you want to greatly avoid, especially at this stage that you're in now. Just starting off, just getting into your minimum wage job, you just set your horizon on what the objective is going to be. What you don't want is to have debt, much like an emergency that happens. You don't want that to be a setback, because debt is only going to be a drag on your ability to move forward. There will come a time where debt will be an asset to you, and you'll be able to utilize it. It's the techniques and the tools and the methodologies that you learn now at the beginning that are going to be steadfast tools that you're going to use and leverage as you grow in your financial future. So understanding a high interest and low interest debt is important as well. Understanding that a high interest debt, and say like a credit card, has a huge amount of impact, where lower interest, say on a family home, does have an impact, but it doesn't. It's extrapolated out over a longer period of time. Debt in and of itself is there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to make the lender money. It's designed to use leverage and money that they have in order for you to go and get something today that you'll be paying off for a very long time in many cases. So avoid those common debt traps and pitfalls. Don't fall into things like high interest, like payday loans. Going into a payday loan place and realizing that you're getting your money ahead of time in order to maybe get through an emergency or do something fun is going to have a huge impact, because the amount of interest and the compounding of that interest ends up that you're paying at really some of the highest rates that are out there. And it's really egregious and just something that you should avoid at all costs. Places like buy here, pay here, car loans, where you're paying weekly instead of monthly. Well, they try to make that payment seem small and inconsequential, but because it's done weekly, it adds up very quickly. The interest rates are very high, and the vehicles tend to be lower quality, tend to be higher mileage, tend to not be the type of vehicle that you may want to get into. And people that are getting into these loans tend to be people that have difficulties with living below their means, with being able to pay their bills, and this only puts you deeper and deeper into debt. It's important that when you have any kind of debts, that you pay them off as fast as possible. The shorter the window of time in which you owe money to a debtor, to a lender, the less interest or less additional monies that you have to pay above and beyond what it is that you used initially from that lender. So being able to pay it off right away is important. So if you're coming into this right now and you have some debt on you, maybe you have a few credit cards, or maybe you have a student loan or something that you have in front of you, it's important that as you start doing your budgeting and you start doing all of your alignments on your financials to start living below your means, first is building that emergency fund, and then second is attack those debts like it owes you money, because it does. It's taking money from you every single time a day passes. Every payment that you make, most of that, in many cases, is going toward the interest payment. It's going to the debtor. It's not going to your debt. So what you want to be able to do is be able to take every extra bit of funds that you have above and beyond your bills and above and beyond your emergency fund, and then taking all that and paying it to the debt. A good opportunity is you have to meet at least the minimum payments. If you have multiples, you can use a snowball technique where you hit the highest interest rate cards first, and then start checking them off and put any extra monies toward the principal. You want to make sure that when you're working with the debtor, any additional payments you note are going toward the principal and not to the next month's payment, so that this way all of it goes directly against the principal and starts reducing your overall debt with that debtor. And keep doing that until that debt is checked off, and then take all the extra money that you're putting towards that debt, including the minimum payments, and take that and put it against the next debt. You want to keep doing that in such a way that you get down to not having any debt with anybody. That is the ideal situation that you want to get to, because only at that point can you really start to focus on the future and focus on really where you're headed. Because if you ignore those debts will be an anchor, and they will slow you down and they will drag you down until you get rid of them. So beyond debts, we have one ultimate goal, and that's to live frugally. It's the ultimate piece with living below our means. We have to understand what a frugal lifestyle means. And it doesn't mean that we never buy anything. It doesn't mean that we never do anything or never have any fun. Or what we do, though, is that we make sure that everything we do, every purchase that we make, every dollar that we spend, we do so meaningfully. We do so with thought in mind. So we embrace the lifestyle of frugality. So, as an example, if we are looking to buy something because we have a need, let's say a vehicle, it's a great option here. So, when buying a vehicle, it's a great opportunity because let's say we need a vehicle to get to work, we need a vehicle to get to any college courses or certification programs, the things that we'd be focusing on again in the future. We want to get a vehicle that is going to be reliable. That is what we need. And what we don't need is something that's going to be a status symbol. It doesn't have to be this this highly efficient German manufactured vehicle. It doesn't have to be something where it has this great prestigious brand associated with them. It's not a symbol of who we are. Our cars are simply a tool in which we use. So we want to get a car that's going to be efficient, a car that's going to be reliable. So something that we're not going to spend a bunch of money on fuel, but something also that we're not going to have a huge payment for the rest of our lives because we wanted to have this prestigious symbol of success. And vehicles are neither symbols of success nor prestigious. They're utilized in that way. And when we talked early on, quite some time ago, about fake millionaires, this tends to be that major component, that piece where a lot of people fall into a trap. They go and they buy the most expensive vehicle that they can afford, that they're allowed to by a lender. They get into the longest term to try to create the least amount of burden per month. Then they have to worry about insurance because insurance is much higher for a higher priced vehicle. Then they have to worry about maintenance because maintenance tends to be higher. And most importantly is when all is said and done and we drive that vehicle off the lot, the vehicle is likely already worth less than the amount of debt that we owe on it. And it's only going to become more and more of a deficit. It does not take long for a vehicle to depreciate to a point where it is no longer an asset. It's simply a tool. If we were to go to the hardware store and buy a hammer, and the hammer sitting side by side, one is $1 and one is $2. And on those two hammers, they are identical in function, they're identical in material, they're identical in capabilities, but one has a prestigious handle and symbol on it and was made with the greatest of care by monks on the top of a mountain, and it was brought down on high and was blessed by baby Jesus. It doesn't matter. It's still a hammer. It's a tool. And we have to get back to thinking about vehicles as a tool because it's what they are for us. Vehicles aren't something that we drive around in to show off our prestigious status. Some people may think of it that way, and that's a trap to fall into. So that is the mindset of frugality. And again, this is another technique about living below your means that are the technique of millionaires. Most millionaires are not driving very elaborate or expensive or exotic vehicles. There are some that may have it as a maybe a weekend car or something like that, and only once they've had enough disposable income to make it even worth it. And even then, they're typically not buying it with debt. They'd be buying it in cash to avoid those pitfalls associated with getting into such an expensive vehicle. But their daily drivers tend to be just reliable, run-of-the-mill vehicles that just keep going. In this day and age, it's not uncommon to see cars at 200 and 300,000 miles on them, that they still run reliably. Yes, there's going to be maintenance. Yeah, there are going to be things that we're going to have to focus on for gas-powered vehicles, getting oil changes regularly, making sure that the tires are in good repair, making sure that the brakes are good, having a good, reliable mechanic that you can rely on to do those things for you and make sure that you're keeping up with the general maintenance. These are things in which we need to do to maintain our investment. Our investment is in a vehicle that acts as our tool of being able to do all the things we need to do in order to earn and build for our future. We have to treat it that way. What happens is a lot of people will get into trouble when they ignore their tools. They don't keep them up to spec. They don't do the things necessary in order to keep them in line. And getting with electric vehicles now have less maintenance associated with them, but they can be pricey to get into. There are certain infrastructure needs that you need, and there are certain concessions and thoughts and understanding that you need in order to make sure that you're able to keep them filled and within mileage in order to make sure that you're able to get where you need to go. and that you can utilize them again for the tool that they are. It's a reframing of the thought of what a vehicle means. And once we start to do that, and once we start to put all of our purchases and all of our understandings into this mindset of it's a tool by which for us to do something. If I'm buying a frying pan, it's so I can fry bacon and eggs in it. It has a very specific purpose. There's no reason for me to get a pan that is able to have all of this special glitz and glamour associated with it in order to be able to fry bacon and eggs. It's a tool with an outcome. And we have to think of everything in our lives that way. When we think about physical objects that way, we have to think about it. Our family, members of our family, people are obviously very different. That's a whole different mindset. But the tools, the things that we spend money on, they have to be thought of that way. They're tools for a very specific purpose. As we start to take on that mindset, it's much easier to take on that frugal lifestyle and to make sure that we're living below our means. If you found this information helpful, be sure to hit the like button, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to Innovation and Income for more financial wisdom. Together, let's innovate, invest, and build our future. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep innovating.